and you'll end up dirty.
The Honourable Joe Goodhew.
Mr Speaker, well, it's great to rise in this debate, and I'm going to take my lead from the Green Party member, James Shaw. And that may seem a little strange here this afternoon, but you know, that member actually talked about great. So I'm going to talk about great. I'm going to talk about some of the great things that are happening in our regions, and of course I am very parochial about Canterbury. I'm a Highlanders supporter, but Canterbury's great because that's where I live, and it's Canterbury's economy that is absolutely vital to New Zealand's economy. So I do want to talk about Canterbury's economy today. So if we take the figures to the end of March 2016, that's the GDP figures. Canterbury's right up there. So 31.9% growth across the period of 5 years, 2011 to 2016. Now that compares to New Zealand at 23.8 across that same period. So Canterbury, now of course we know that a number of things have been happening in Canterbury, some good, some bad, and people may think it's just about construction in Canterbury in terms of that growth. But drilling down literally into what is creating that growth, it's actually more than that. It's professional, scientific, technical services, it's transport, it's manufacturing, definitely agriculture, but it's also postal services. That was one that interested me because that was perhaps not something that would have jumped onto my radar. In Canterbury, we also know that if we look at the ANZ research job ads, across that period of time, the last 18 months, the amount of job ads in Canterbury has oscillated around the 5,500 mark, a little more at the beginning of that period. Now that tells you that things are pretty hot in Canterbury, and that particular GDP growth, of course, is around growth, and as long as the region continues to grow like that, we know it will continue to be very much a big part of the engine room of the economy. But there's more great news. You know, New Zealanders are pretty interested in knowing that more houses are being built, and we know that across the country the annual consents have doubled and almost tripled in Auckland, and that should provide some reassurance to New Zealanders. As well as that, we're actually back in surplus, and I can tell you that for New Zealanders reflecting back on the last few years since the GFC, that's been a tough ask. But this government, national-led government, has delivered on that with a surplus of $1.8 billion last year. What that means is we can start to pay down debt, which is really, really important. And then after getting debt to around 20% of GDP, we will be returning an amount to the super fund as well, starting up the contributions again. Now, to finish, I want to talk in specific about one great news story close to home for me. So this is around, it's quite topical this week, really. It's about pizza, but it's about the mozzarella cheese that goes on pizza. And I want to talk about technology that was developed by Fonterra Research and Development Centre. It's supported by the Transforming the Dairy Value Chain, which was a primary growth partnership. Now, of course, primary growth partnership, that's MPI, Ministry for Primary Industries, it's Fonterra and it's Dairy New Zealand. What this technology does, and it's tightly kept secret, of course, is it actually produces mozzarella. It's called individually quick frozen mozzarella, and it does it in, you know, it used to take 3 months. Now it happens in 6 hours, and that is why we have some great contracts with the rest of the world to supply that stretchy cheese to them, and in fact that will contribute to what Fonterra are heading towards by 2023. Food service, that's mozzarella cheese being part of it, a $5 billion part of that particular sector. But it's more when I think about what's happening locally. This actually means 1,000 people in jobs building the $240 million plus mozzarella plant at Clandeboy. Already a big plant, but this will be, in the Southern Hemisphere, the largest mozzarella plant. In addition to that, we're talking 133 new jobs. Now those jobs some of them are really technical, some of them are entry level, some of them will be people coming out of the Polytech system, some of them will be young people coming out of schools. And Fonterra is actively recruiting from around the country as well. Now that means a huge boost for our part of the region. This is why we as a government are able to say there are some great things happening. There's more to do, but some really great things happening in my region.
Rino Tarakatani.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker.